Russia and Iran appear to be turning Trump's naval blockade into a mockery, repeatedly breaking the siege around Iran's waters. US sanctioned tankers are now openly violating the American blockade, with tracking groups saying some ships are doing it almost out of spite to show up Washington's control. 3 tankers capable of carrying a combined 1.9 million barrels of oil have managed to fool US warships near Iran, slipping through the perimeter despite heavy surveillance. Iran's leadership, including Mujtaba, seems to be taking advantage of the US Navy's dire financial and operational state. 3 empty, US sanctioned tankers have reportedly broken through the US Navy's blockade line to enter the Iranian perimeter, setting themselves up to load sanctioned crude. According to independent shipping monitor tanker trackers, the tankers slipped through the naval siege in recent days, highlighting growing gaps in enforcement. One vessel briefly turned off its automatic identification system, or AIS, to mask its position, a classic sanctions-busting tactic that tanker trackers says it detected. Another ship was sailing under a Russian flag, while a third hugged the Omani coastline to edge its way past the blockade and into Iranian-controlled waters. Together, tanker trackers estimates these tankers can lift about 1.9 million barrels of Iranian oil, enough to generate significant revenue despite US sanctions. The same shipping monitor later revealed more details about another Russian-flagged tanker that had been repeatedly testing the edges of the US cordon. They reported that the US-sanctioned tanker Pegasus repeatedly moved in and out of the US blockade perimeter around Iran, apparently daring American forces to respond. Tanker trackers even suggested on social media that Pegasus was sailing in and out just out of spite, framing the movements as a deliberate taunt. The group said multiple satellite images confirmed the tanker's movements, ruling out the possibility that its track was an illusion. They stressed that the vessel's movements were not an AIS spoof, insisting the data reflected genuine crossings of the blockade line and not fake signals. These repeated crossings came just as Iran introduced new rules for ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz, tightening its own control over one of the world's most critical oil choke points. Iran launched the Hormuz Safe platform, signaling a concerted push to tighten Tehran's control over shipping and commercial activity in the Strait of Hormuz. Fast News reported the system will offer digital maritime insurance for ships transiting the route, a move Tehran says will protect commerce while placing oversight under Iranian authorities. The platform also enables payments in cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, adding a new financial layer intended to bypass conventional banking channels and sanctions constraints. The chairman of Parliament's National Security Committee said Iran designed a designated route system to regulate passage and direct vessels through supervised corridors. Ibrahim Azizi said only commercial vessels that cooperate with Iranian authorities and comply with new procedures will be allowed safe passage under the scheme. Azizi also warned that hostile countries, including the United States, could be barred from the designated route, tying access to political alignment and cooperation. Subsequently, the Iranian parliament speaker warned the world is on the cusp of a new order, framing the initiative as part of a broader shift in maritime and geopolitical arrangements. Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf said, and I quote, "I emphasize that the Iranian nation's 70-day resistance has accelerated this transformation. The future belongs to the global south." Unquote. Meanwhile, a former US State Department official warned that Iran is unlikely to retreat from asserting its rights over the strait, stressing the durability of Tehran's posture. Alan Ayer said the US faces no good way out as accumulating economic damage increases pressure and complicates options for de-escalation. Ayer noted that if Chinese ships receive preferential access under Iran's scheme, Beijing would have less incentive to pressure Tehran to change its behavior. He also suggested that recent US-China talks are unlikely to compel Tehran to back down. Amid talk that fighting with Iran could resume, senior US Navy leaders are now openly admitting they cannot sustain current costs without painful cuts elsewhere. The service's operations chief says the 2026 budget was written before epic fury was on the table, meaning this entire Iran campaign is being funded off a plan that never anticipated a major Gulf War. Admiral Daryl Caudill describes the Navy as burning bright in the Middle East, but warns that every extra patrol and strike comes at a steep operational cost that is now starting to bite. He says the fleet is rapidly depleting fuel budgets, maintenance money, stocks of smart weapons, and the finite flight hours left on jets and helicopters scheduled for overhaul. Caudill warns that without extra cash from Congress, the Navy will have to start slashing training cycles and routine operations by July, gutting readiness to keep the Iran front man. His warning comes in the wake of US-Israeli operations that began on February 28, a campaign that suddenly turned the Gulf into a 24/7 theater for carriers, destroyers, and patrol aircraft. That high-intensity phase lasted 39 days before an April 8 ceasefire understanding, but the Navy's bills, and the strain on crews and hardware, have only kept mounting since. Caudle says, and I quote, "The fiscal 2026 budget didn't bake in Operation Epic Fury. You see a large Navy force in the Middle East. So we're burning bright. But it does come at cost, and it comes at operational costs. To have the funds necessary to continue the war effort, which is quickly racking up fuel costs, operating hours, maintenance dollars, and munitions. I do fear that I'll have to start making decisions in the July time frame. My record recruiting is going to be thwarted without additional funding to PCS to those individuals from boot camp and to pay enlistment and re-enlistment bonuses." Unquote. Months of non-stop missions around Iran have heavily drained maintenance accounts, forcing commanders to delay repairs and push aging hulls harder than planners ever intended. Caudle says the Navy may even have to pause permanent change of station moves for 12,000 to 15,000 sailors, freezing careers and family plans to save money for operations. He also warns that enlistment and re-enlistment bonuses could be delayed or reduced, undercutting recruitment just when the service needs fresh crews most. Extended deployments off Iran have already created logistics problems, with some ships reporting shortages of fresh food, spare parts, and other basics as rotations drag on. Reports from the fleet suggest morale is suffering and mechanical faults are rising, as overworked sailors and stretched maintenance cycles collide under punishing schedules.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.